number 7, and we're going to talk about default. What happens in the case of a default on one of these assets?
Yep.
So Eddie's going to talk about that, and we're going to go through a little case study for you too.
Yeah, so Martha has done a lot of these, and most of them have worked.
Most of them work perfectly, no problems, but you're going to have a few that for some reason could default.
Yep. So this was an asset you bought, Muncie, Indiana.
In Muncie, Indiana. Nice little house.
Yep. This was a seller finance note.
It was.
The lady got divorced.
No, her husband passed away.
Oh, okay.
She had some small children.
Okay.
And I think she actually did move to another city to take a job.
Okay.
And rented this house.
Okay. So at the time you bought it, you had a $99,000 value, and it was a performing note.
Yep.
Had a great pay history.
Yep.
Everything looks great. And you had a first lien, 78 payments into the deal. You bought the note.
I bought the note. So
Right.
they had been there quite some time, 8 years.
Yep. The loan balance was $37,000, which was great because your loan to value was really low. And you buy it. It had 11.25% interest rate.
Right.
You made a good buy.
I made a really good buy on this little deal. Of course, the loan balance was low. It wasn't a high balance transaction, but the payment was decent for the balance, $550 a month. And with 102 remaining, I was like, well, I could just collect it if I wanted to, right? Wouldn't even have to sell the partial.
Is this a typo?
No, it's not. No, it's really not a typo.
Okay.
So I paid around $20,000 for the note, right?
I think it's a typo.
No, I really did. I thought I paid less than that, actually.
Well, that's what my records say. So originally the loan was $49,000, and it was, as we said, there were 78 payments that were made before Martha bought the partial. So it amortized down to just under $37,000. Long pay history, and you buy the partial, and 102 months.
And 102 months remaining on the note.
It was a 15-year loan, so 78 made, 102 remaining, right? Equals 180, right? And you bought it at a good price, and it's hard to believe that a loan like this goes into default.
Yeah, it is. It was just an unfortunate situation, and when we see defaults, it's normally because of a life crisis. You have a spouse that passes away, a catastrophic illness, or a divorce. It's something, like that is, or maybe a health issue with a child, something that's really catastrophic in your life that happens. Maybe just a job loss, or, someone sometime during the housing market, crisis, we were seeing, both parties, both spouses without jobs. So, different things that happen in someone's life that causes a total default like this. People don't just walk away after they paid on a house for 8 years.
Well, and here's the thing. The lady, Martha buys the note. The lady moves out and goes and moves to another city.
To take a job.
And she tries to be a landlord.
Right.
And she wasn't skilled at being a landlord. She didn't know how to be a landlord.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, we hate it for her, but it wasn't, you didn't cause it, of course. And the reality is she wasn't a professional landlord, and she'd have been better off to have sold the house. Martha was in a safe position, so Martha, I changed the color of the graph. Red represents your investment in the note.
Okay.
And so orange represents what's owed.
Okay, so it's flipped around, right? Yeah. So I have about $20,000 in it, and we've got a little over $35,000, about $36,000 due back.
So payment was mailbox money. And at the time you bought it, it was the obvious great deal.
It was. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, in some of these deals like this, I just keep them. I'm not really looking for a partial investor, but I could sell a partial.
Yeah. So you bought it for 21.
Right.
You had is that true?
Well, I don't know. You did the math.
I think it is.
It may not be right.
I think it is.
He can do this math in his head, so I can't. I have to get my calculator out. So
this was, so you sold a partial for 28.
So I did sell a partial on this particular asset, yes.
You bought it for 22 and you sold a partial for 28.
I did. So I made a little money on this. And
A little money.
A little. And sold a short term because I did probably had somebody that wanted a short term that didn't want to go out past 5 years, and that's probably why I sold a partial on this particular asset.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is how your graph looked, right? Your partial. You went from. I'm gonna just draw on this for a second.
Okay.
Let's see here. Basically, let's see here. This was 60-month partial, which meant you were owed 40 months, right?
Okay. Yep.
And you can almost see. I like the thing I like about this this graph is it kind of lets me. You know, if you can see here, it's like at any given day, whoops, come on here, work with me here. At any given day, this becomes, whoops, well, here, I can pick a better color, let's see here.
Yeah, it's too light.
Let's pick green. That's what an early payoff would look like, right? Even before you got it back. The difference in the top of the blue line and the top of the orange line would be how much money you would get in early payoff. Now, obviously, the loan's paying off super fast, right? Mm-hmm. So when did this thing default, Martha?
It probably defaulted about a year ago. And what we do in the case of default is we have a process that we like to go through. We want the borrowers to stay if they can. So we first try to do a modification because it's their home. They paid for in this instance. I mean, 8 years is a long time to be in a home and then lose it. So we try to do a modification. I always try to have a very good rapport with the borrowers, even during this time, and even though they haven't paid, we're calling them. We're still try to be extremely polite and businesslike, but we understand that there's a crisis, right? And so we're trying to work with them. So we want them to be reciprocal and take our call and talk to us about what's going on. Yeah. And so since she had moved, and I guess at the time of default, that's really when we found out that she had moved to take a job, and then she couldn't keep up both. She couldn't manage both homes, and so we went to the next step, which is for her to give us a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And so she had agreed to a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and we thought we were going down that track where she would just simply sign documents that deed the property back to us. And in the interim, she decided to take bankruptcy. So it got tied up into bankruptcy for a while, and then after the bankruptcy was over, because she had taken bankruptcy, then we had to go through a full foreclosure process on the property. So we've just gotten it back.
Yeah, so this got a little more complicated because you thought you were just going to get her to deed it over to you.
Right, we just thought, and she had agreed. And so it was nothing more than us getting the document. We'd already started the document process when we found out from our servicer that she had declared bankruptcy.
So about how many payments had you collected, or you had your partial investor collected before it went into default? They were owed 60 months, right?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I would say they probably collected 2 years at least, if not longer.
All right, so
maybe 3.
I'm going to draw this up. At 2 years, whoops, oh, wait a minute. At 2 years, their payoff, well, I thought it was going to work for me. All right, let's see here, just a second.
Can you go clear that?
A highlighter, and I'm going to use the green. So about 2 years into it,
right,
your investor looks like he was owed still close to about just over 16,000.
Yeah, about 16,000 probably, yeah.
Okay. Now you'd already made $6,000 when you sold it to him.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you have enough of these things working. You said, look, let me just buy you out.
Yeah, it was a low enough dollar figure at that $15,000 mark. As a matter of fact, I don't think it was like on the top of my head. I think it was around 13,000.
Okay.
So, long story short, it was a low enough dollar figure that, to me, I thought it was better just to take him out of that because I had the cash available to do that. So I just paid him his unpaid balance on this asset so that I could take him out of this and not wait through this bankruptcy and the foreclosure in order to, before he ever got any money back. Because we did not know how long this process was going to take. And I just want to say that in taking care of him and doing this for him, it wasn't but a couple of weeks later, and he called me back and said, well, you know, I want to put this money with some other and buy another asset. So we just rolled him right into something else, to another asset.
So you paid him off to only 2 weeks later to sell him another asset.
Yeah, to sell him another one, right. And he just wanted to do a little restructuring. We actually, not to get into this part of it, but, you know, he kind of merged some of his some of his IRAs together. Yeah. And so then I've actually sold him several assets, probably 4 or 5. Yeah.
All right, so that was Muncie, Indiana. This was an amazing deal to have ever gone in default. Right?
Right.
This was a house in Memphis. We actually did not buy a seller finance note on this deal. A hedge fund bought a big package of defaulted loans, a hedge fund out of California, and they modified this loan and got it paying again in bankruptcy.
It was in bankruptcy.
And then we bought it at a discount. Actually, a student brought us this deal.
Yep.
Right?
A student had found it.
A student found it and brought us this deal, and it was, the loan balance was $160,000 at 6%, $1,000 a month, $1,081 a month, 271 months was the remaining term. And if you look at the kind of the dotted line there, it just shows you the house was worth $220 and the loan balance was $160, right? So it's 73% loan to value. The odds of ever seeing this asset like this go to foreclosure is just a fluke.
Yeah, it really is. We were just shocked that. I mean, she paid like clock. They just paid like clockwork.
We don't know,
right up till the very end.
We don't know what happened. Something weird happened.
Yeah.
Right. So we buy the note, remaining term. We bought the note for $105,000. Okay. So the loan balance was $105. 271 payments remaining. We only paid $105 if you look at how we added in our funding, which means we bought it at a $55,000 discount, right? And so the $55,000 discount plus the interest on a $160,000 loan took our return from a 6% note to now a 12% return. So the 12% return is decent. It's not amazing. Right. But it shows you, that's a good example of how discount works.
Right. But I mean, this is a really nice asset. And so there were, I'm sure, you know, like if this had been for sale out and, you know, just, I think there are investors that would have paid up for this asset that would have bought it for less than a 10% yield, right?
Yeah, but here's the reality. The student brought us the deal because we would pull the trigger and close.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm just saying, like it was a really nice asset.
It was a solid deal. Yeah. And by the way, this was a performing Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and she also paid us another $18,000 in back payments that she owed per her bankruptcy plan.
Right.
Right. So that's not even on there, but we got another $18,000. Because in addition to the regular monthly payment, they had to pay out their bankruptcy plan.
They had to pay out the
bankruptcy.
bankruptcy.
And they paid it all the way out to you.
They paid it 100% of the bankruptcy. Yeah, 100% of it.
So you sold a partial.
I did.
And let's see, you sold 143 payments, right?
Right.
Did the $100 thing, that model. And you had $100
basically
invested.
Just kind of recouped my investment.
Yep. 143 payments, and it did beautifully. It performed. Your investor was happy. We did not assign the bankruptcy payments, right? You kept
No, we
the bankruptcy
kept those,
payments.
and yeah, those kept coming into our account every month.
So
yeah,
we collected $18,000 in bankruptcy payments that are outside of the $1,081 a month.
Right.
Right. So everything's rocking along. Martha's got a backside this note of 10 years and 8 months, 128 months, $100 invested. That makes your yield what? High enough?
It's enough.
Actually, I think this was in my retirement account, okay? I don't think this was Martha's retirement. This was Eddie's.
Yes. Well, the majority of them are someone's other than mine. Let's just put it that way. I only have one.
So, the investor got like a 6% return. Everything's rocking along. Our yield is great. And this is how the graph originally looked.
Right.
Right?
That's correct.
And then, Martha, we were going to get paid off at the end of 143 months and get a loan back with almost $100,000 owed, plus 6% interest.
That's right.
And that was after 143 months. That was what was anticipated.
That's what yes, exactly. If it had paid as agreed.
So, let's talk about what really happened.
Okay.
I'm going to click this back.
Yep.
Pull out my little drawing pencil here. Sorry about the noise. When did it default?
I would say we probably, about a year into the partial sale, it defaulted. Not long after we sold it, it defaulted.
So up in here, it defaulted.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, Martha, this loan balance was $160. The house is worth $220. Mm-hmm. What's the odds that we would be high bidder at the foreclosure sale?
Because of the condition of that home, almost zero. It was extremely low that we were going to get the house back. We pretty much knew that as soon as we got it to the foreclosure steps that either an investor or a homeowner would buy it. And of course, we had already done an inspection because they had literally called the servicer and said, we're surrendering the house back to you. So they just gave the house back to us. And even though we did have to go through the foreclosure process, we went in, had inspections done.
Yeah.
I mean, the house was immaculate. It needed, just some basic TLC, nothing major. So we pretty much knew it would sell at the courthouse steps.
So the investors owed about $90 on the payoff, right?
Yeah.
And the payoff for the loan was somewhere about $155.
Something like that, yeah.
Right? If you look at the top of the green line there.
Yeah.
So that's $65,000. Right here is $65,000.
Right.
And the investor got about $90,000.
That's about right.
Is that about right?
That's about right.
Close to it?
Yep.
So we're not saying that always happens. We're saying that's absolutely what happened on these two deals. But, and Martha has done a lot of these deals. And to be perfectly honest with you, we're having to dig through a pile to go find defaults, right? But these were two that did default. And we're not saying they're always going to be that good, but, there was no chance we were going to be third party and own the house at the foreclosure sale.
No.
Because look, they owed $150 something, and the house was worth way up here. The house was worth $220,000.
Right.
Well, if the house is worth $220,000, there's a lot of equity in here that some other third-party investor is going to buy it before it gets, because we're going to get our payoff and attorney fees and tax. I mean, we're going to get what we can legally collect, but we can't.
Now, if I could have gotten a deed in lieu of foreclosure, then I could have gotten that $220,000.
Oh, you're saying that had the deed in lieu worked out.
If I could, well, this is on this particular transaction. On this particular one, she surrendered the house and they left, and we didn't have any contact with them. But if we could have gotten her to if she would have given me a deed in lieu of foreclosure, then I would have owned the house. She would have deeded it to me. I could have sold it for fair market value, so I could have sold it for $220,000.
So you would have had a $220,000 house with a payoff of the partial of 90.
Right.
So it could have been better.
It could have been better, but it wasn't. But it was still good. It was good. You know, it's one of those situations. You if it happens, you go through it, and that's why we like to make sure when we go through these case studies that you're understanding the loan to value and investment to value, because that spread in there is what you've got to have. That's part of what you've got to look at, just in case you have a default.
Right. So it's very rare to see an asset like this that was that equitable on that nice of a property go in default. We don't really know what their backstory was as to why that happened, but it did. And but we had we weren't wanting bad for them, but it did turn out to be a solid, safe investment for us. We only got the loan payoff. Everything above that somebody else got.
Well, the equity, whoever bought it at the courthouse steps earned the equity on the property.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
All right, we are going to progress on, Miss Martha,
Okay.
and we're gonna start getting down into some details, some work details.
Yeah, we want to give you guys some background on, and some explanation in regard to different things. Even though we've given you all the case study, well, what happens when you really start working on these assets to buy one? So that's what we're going to have coming up.
All right, see you then.